Oh, wow.
Saw it twice, so I was like, oh my god.
That was just weird.
I always used to see a light coming up,
Yeah.
like a headlight, but there was nobody there.
Oh, it's just disappeared.
Hello everybody, welcome to Truth Proof. I hope you've all had a great weekend and I hope you're looking forward to week ahead, if that's possible, when you've got work in store for you. Well, some people like work, don't they? I never did, but I'm just being honest. I worked hard enough, but I didn't like it. But that aside, it's great to be here and share a few things with you guys. I think we've got Alison, Gemma and Lee doing moderating tonight, so thanks a lot, guys. Really appreciate it, as always. And what we got, well over 100 people in chat already. So tonight I'm going to be talking to Mark Thompson. And you might remember Mark when he told us that incredible account of when he was a young boy and he saw the Green Man, which created loads of interest and, a subject that I'd never really looked into until speaking to Mark. And it sort of piqued my interest a little bit. Same things on Cliff Tops. We've been going up there myself. Weather's been atrocious. Linny, Pete, Chris, and Jeremy as well. He were up there with us other day. So we've been spending time up there. There's not been a lot happening, but as I say, weather's not been very, very good to us. But if you're not there, you're not in it. You're not going to win it, are you? Let's have a look who's in chat. Peter Leach, Luke Taylor, Welsh Rebel. Linny's in, Mrs. Linny, Mia Girl, Susan Wiseman, Karen Behrman, Matthew Cook. Let's have a look here. Light dazzles, it certainly does, doesn't it? Carl Dan came and Sarah at weekend. It was great to spend some time Friday with Carl and Sarah and Linny and everybody. We wish we'd have had better weather, guys, but we didn't, and it was still good. We see Dragonborn Rising, Gillian Daniels, Rachel Martell. Let's have a look. So I'm going to have to stop. Zeno Escape. Thanks, Zeno. Really appreciated. And the bill, 999. Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to bring Mark in. And tonight, questions based. Mark and myself will answer questions as honestly as we can. You know me. If I don't know, I'll just hold my hands up and say, I haven't got a clue. This guy's got a lot of knowledge on ley lines, ancient sites. He's not just a one-trick pony, somebody who saw and had an experience as a child. It's kind of put him on the path that he's on today. And he's really interesting. So hit him with some questions, capital letters, please. So we'll bring Mark in. Hello, Mark. How are you doing?
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Excellent.
Good to see you again.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's got to be probably going on for a year since we spoke, on here. And everybody enjoyed listening to your account of the Green Man. And I don't mean, can you tell us it again? I mean, we might touch on bits of it if you wanted to. But that's only part of your story, really, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, seeing what I did when I was 6, it put me on a path. I had a keen interest in electronics from an early age. Something that fascinated me, how things worked. I wanted to work, anything that was electronic. I needed to get into the nuts and bolts of it to see how it all, hung together. Back in those days, it was valves. Like I had an old turntable full of valves, and I was fascinated. So I did go to college. Sorry.
Did you hear that story I spoke about last week or a couple of weeks ago with the Bakelite radio, and the guy was hearing voices through the radio?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether you've ever heard anything about anything like that, have you, or experienced anything yourself?
Well, it's probably going on to what we're going to talk about soon, but with the crystal technology, I mean, they use a lot of crystals in electronics, different types, and it's to stabilize frequency. So, like quartz crystal, if you put a mechanical force on a crystal, it will emanate piezoelectric frequencies at a certain voltage, and that you can fix that. So if you want to clock your CPU, you tune your crystal, and it's quite fascinating when you do actually start to study electronics. It sounds a bit wappy, but electrons, you're manipulating. In the old days, we used to use doped germanium or silicon as well. And then when you look at MOSFET, which came out in the 40s, I think, 1940s. So that whoever dreamt it, whoever invented that technology was pretty clever.
Yeah, kind of. Do you think sometimes, not necessarily technologies, but some things are given to us? As you know, you're sort of great writers write things, and they'll say, "I don't know how I wrote that. I don't," or I painted this. And do you think sometimes we're sort of gifted like that?
That's interesting you say. I mean, you take Tesla. He invented the polyphase motor. And he gave us, they say he gave us AC, but like Einstein said, we're just rediscovering it. It was already there. We're just rediscovering it. So, but Tesla knew about the earth energy. Because what people don't realize, like physics, if you open a physics book, you get 100 volts at a meter, 200 volts at 2 meters, and that's in the atmosphere because we've got a magnetic field all around us, and we are tuned to that frequency of that magnetic field, 7.38 hertz, which is a Schumann resonance. So every bit of life on the planet, trees, birds, you, me, we're all attuned to that frequency. And it's all about frequencies, really, and our perception, our light perception of frequencies, which is quite limited.
So,
us,
what we call unexplained phenomena. So I'm cutting through your words there. Apologies, but what we call unexplained phenomena, that our sort of search and quest to find things about the unknown, the things that occasionally interact with us. Do you think it's there? It's just on another frequency.
Yeah, I think that the skeptics have answered that question for us. They said, "Oh, you're just hallucinating." Well, the more I delve into this, it is an altered state of consciousness. I believe that. I think it's an altered state because, when you look at a child and their brainwaves are oscillating at theta, we're not oscillating at that frequency when we get older. We're on alpha. When we're in dream state, we can put, we can go into that theta mode. But it's quite interesting that kids see a lot of this phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And like the scientists do know that their brainwaves are oscillating faster because they're tiny little brains, and maybe that's why they're going on this hallucination thing. Where you look at old ancient, like the Maya, the Egyptians, they're all jacked off on mushrooms or psychedelics. It wasn't in
just transporting them to that other state. Transporting them to that other state.
They opened up their perception to, and it was like, especially the Mayans, that, doing the old mushies, there were, and all their carvings, and, it's quite interesting when you actually start reading the ancient beliefs, the ancient texts. Like if you look at the Dresden Codex, and the amount of, dragons and Quetzalcoatl, he was the feathered serpent. Cuckoo Clan, he was the feathered serpent. They were all talking about dragons for the.
So where have they seen these creatures?
Yeah, like Chinese dragons. Britain, Albion. They all talk about George and the dragon. We've got this myth about George and the dragon. Where did those dragons go? Are we talking about energy? Like if you look at Chichen Itza, the actual sun when it sets creates the spine of a dragon as it goes down the pyramid. So they obviously put a lot of effort and to build something like that.
Yeah.
you know, and to believe in this energy, because they do. It's on one of those. I forget what they call them, but it's on an element of water.
But I
So
mean,
and
to
then
have the precision and the technology with what we called primitive
amazing.
tools back in the day to
Yeah,
do what they
yeah.
did. There's a question here, Mark.
Well, you say they're primitive.
Mark, is it true that ley lines can be created by people, not just found?
Well, you know that Google image I shared with Google Earth. If you go
Yeah.
on Google Earth, and if you connect up Karnak, which is 5,000 or BC, you can draw a straight line through the ancient site in Britain, Castlereagh, and go up to the Orkney line. It's a direct straight line. Now, how did the ancients know that? How
Mm.
did I mean, we're talking thousands of miles.
This has
And
been
and
before we reckon to have reached these locations and the cross
yeah.
pollination of knowledge. Yeah, how would they have known?
And the stones they used in those stone circles, or like Rudston. If you draw a line through Silbury Hill up to Rudston and then across to Castlereagh, you got a 3-4-5 triangle. And we're talking, hundreds of miles. So, did they possess a knowledge that we've forgotten? Could they perceive the ley lines like that? Can we? I don't think the earth energies are created by us, and we can just perceive them. That's my belief. I mean, I'm only talking about my personal belief. I'm not trying to say this is fact or anything. I'm just saying,
Mm.
the more you look into it, there are parallels. You find, somebody sees a Bigfoot and they said, "Oh, we saw these orange orbs." Somebody sees a dogman, "Oh, we saw these orange orbs," and
Mm.
it shimmered and like those ribbons that I saw with the Green Man,
Yeah.
that comes up quite a lot. That in people's accounts, and it's like, hey, is there a connection here? Is this a conscious realm? When you look at the Nordics and that they talk about Alfheim and Helheim, and we're in Midgard. Are we perceiving that astral, you know, part of like we're on the physical plane, which is, I think with 3D, but is there another element to us that we cannot perceive and we've switched off? There's a part of us that we've sort of dumbed
It
down over
makes
the
it makes
years.
you wonder, and closer to home. I mean, because when we first started speaking, we neither of us obviously realised that we'd actually lived very close. As in, you were in Driffield at one time, I believe, weren't
Yeah.
you? So,
And
so how
Caton, yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
how important then, Mark, is something that were close to where we both lived, the Rudston monolith, the tallest standing stone in the UK. We know we talk about unexplained phenomena, but there's unexplained things occur around it anyway. So how important is the monolith when we're talking about ley lines and?
Well, churches are like, if you go to any church, and I think what's happened is the churches were built on the old pagan sites, because they incorporated all these pagan imagery, like the Green Man
Yeah.
and the werewolf, and the stag man, and like he was like Herne the Hunter. There was a stag man that looked after oh,
So
he looked up. He was like a nature spirit, if you
yeah,
like. So he was seen everywhere, and it's always on a like if you look at Willie Howe, and then that line that comes up from Silbury Hill goes through Willie Howe and it goes up to Rudston, and then takes a left turn and goes across to Castlereagh. And on those particular sites, you get a lot of accounts.
yeah.
Even now,
Well,
it's like that.
you're
When
so
you
right.
start investigating.
Myself and Bob Brown, we went and met a guy probably a month ago who lived in Hunanby, and he wanted to tell us about a time slip. I think I touched on it here just briefly. And what we did, we got in his car, Mark, and he drove us and talked us through it as we're driving along. And he'd no idea where Willie Howe was. And he says, and I overtook this tractor here. This is because he saw it further down the road. It had an unusual number on the old tractor, an old vintage type tractor. He says, and then we come on 10 minutes later, we drove we were at the back of this tractor again, which were impossible. But it occurred. I says, do you realise where you are here, Phil? This guy, like, I says, not the monolith. I says, Willie Howe's there, look, literally within eyesight. And so that was interesting that, you know, just a potential time slip. We've got the pilot with this time anomaly over Willie Howe. And what you've just spoken about, the Rudston monolith, then Willie Howe, a line straight through it, because you said it goes up towards the Devil's Arrows, but in between that, you've got Sharp Howe, which is a barrow cemetery. I think there was, before the plough took them, I think there's evidence of about 5 now, but there were about 9 burial mounds, all sort of grouped together. But that's where in 1948, the Folkton man, because Folkton and Flixton literally sit side by side, and if you put there'd still be a small village if you use both villages together. Do you know what I mean? And so he was from Folkton, and 1948 is when he saw that thing that he described as a man that looked in the shape of a dog in the shape of a man leant against a tree at Sharp Howe. So like you just said, you've got these, 1948 is hardly historic when we're going back to Neolithic times, but we've got all these accounts that just span decades, don't they?
Thousands of years, really.
Yeah.
You know, you go back to Sema, where the cars were one big lake, but then you've got a lot of ancient sites that are along there, because that was their major source of food, was that lake, wasn't it? And they found a lot of burials there. You know, Chariot was buried there.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, the people who owned the Flixton, what did they call the Spittal Inn at Flixton? I went and spoke to them years ago, and I asked them if they'd let me look at the deeds to their property because they were ancient, and they did. And some of them were on parchment, and that's where it says an infestation of savage beasts and things, because their home was built on Carman's Spittal. Carman's Spittal was the hospital built to protect travellers from wolves and an infestation of savage beasts. And it later became a farm. And then it became the Spittal Inn, you know, the public house. And I went to speak to the couple, actually, but what lady who I ended up speaking to, we sat outside in grounds at pub, and she got this big box, and we were looking through deeds and looking at all those items. And what you just said, so it does make sense. I've not just gone off on a tangent. He was digging a big pond out at the Spittal Inn and found evidence of a Roman marching ground. I think that's what they called it. And they found a chariot and evidence of, you know, horse bones and things, which were fascinating. So you're spot on there.
Yeah. I mean, when the Romans came over, you know, what we don't realize is all, you know, Albion as a country, which was Britain, you had the Picts up north, the Brigantes were around the North York area, and then you had certain tribes, and they had their own beliefs and you know, the handed down traditions. The Romans came in, and you know, they wanted it their way. They left 300 years later, and you know, they call it the Dark Ages, where everything, you know, they've got no evidence of settlement, or so a lot of that knowledge, you know, and the paganism was stamped out. You know, those Celts, they believed in certain things that was eradicated, but then they started to, with the churches, with Christianity coming across, and they put the churches where these power sources are. You know, they're built on top of these pagan sites.
They knew the significance of that land, didn't they? You know?
Yeah, I think so.
I think I'm not certain, somebody might correct me in chat. I think it's All Saints Church at Rudston. And I've said it loads of times because they're always keen to say that the monolith stands in the grounds of All Saints Church. It doesn't. The church stands in the grounds of the monolith.
Have you noticed what they've done to that that stone though. I mean, that stone is got crystalline in it.
Are you on about
So
the capping?
yeah, it's got a lead capping on it.
Yeah.
But why
This
would you do that?
well,
Oh, to protect
they
the
say there's a
water,
fracture
but
in
they haven't done
stone.
it. Yeah, no, I mean, like that stone's been there for thousands of years, and suddenly you're putting lead on the top, which is an insulator. Yeah,
Good
it's
point,
quite.
that, isn't
Yeah,
it? So
I'd be interested if you took that lead off there to see what happened.
I'm not
Because
advocating anybody do it. Well, I'm not going to do it. I'll just
but
put
people
this
do say
question up.
about seeing lights there.
Yep. Are there any books or resources on ley lines for Yorkshire? Margaret Webster says.
Yes, there are. There's a good website. I can put the links up. There's an English guy who lives in France now. He's done a load of work, and he's come leaps and bounds since Google Earth. In the old days, he could only speculate, but now he's getting exact measurements. And he uses Google Earth and the stuff. He can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I can give you a link for that.
That's brilliant.
But he lives
Honestly,
in Karnak now.
can't really.
Yeah.
So jumping to where you live, and like you're telling me earlier, you've had snow, but that's not what I'm talking about. What about cryptid type sightings and reports and UFO reports? Are you heavily involved in looking into that, or is it just something that Mark does for his own sort of peace of mind, his own hobby?
I'd look at all sorts of accounts. I'm quite because I'm out of work at the moment. I'm heavily into research, and there's a guy here up in Auckland. He's passed away now, sadly, but he did a lot of work on ley lines and magnetic lines, and their link to the UFO paths. Every time someone saw a UFO, he would plot it, and he says there's a connection here with the magnetic lines of
Are we in
Earth
danger of
energy.
bending some of that to fit our narrative, do you think? Or was he pretty honest? And did you look at what he'd done and think, yeah, these are on the lines?
Well, he approached it from a scientific point of view.
Right.
So when you've got scientific evidence, then it stands on its own, doesn't it? I mean, it stands up to. I mean, everybody's got their opinion. I mean, I'd be a skeptic if I didn't, being a logical thinker. If I didn't have those experiences as a kid, I'd be more of a skeptic. I think, and I'm always looking for even an alternative explanation. Like a lot of parallels are to do with consciousness. People are perceiving things, experience things, not only from an emotional but a mental capacity. And the scientific world hasn't got a clue, and they just put it down to. But and if it is hallucinations, then so be it. But there's a lot of people who are experiencing this phenomena, and
I mean, I don't want it to be unexplained phenomena for the sake of it being an unexplained phenomena. And we're the first people on those cliff tops. We don't see anybody else up there with us on these cold nights and freezing weather. But we're not. Most of the time, nothing happens. And when something does happen, we're always looking for the logical. We're always looking for the explanation for what it could be. And you know what? A lot of the times, there is an explanation. There is a reason that's firmly planted in earth, and it's not something in the woo. And we run with that. We don't pretend that. We talk about what Jeremy filmed a few weeks ago with his thermal camera. Sorry to detract from what you're saying there, but
I remember seeing that.
We've filmed loads with thermal cameras, absolutely loads of things, and we're familiar with what we're looking at. But this man had it on his phone screen. He's looking at the thermal working through his phone, and he's got a torch in the direction of the figure. So he's lighting the land up, and it's not there. He can't see it with his naked eyes, but his mind's telling him it is there. And he kind of looks around, and then it's gone. So, I've played up on that one a little bit, and we've put that together for a short, which will be going on tomorrow night at some point, maybe 7 or 8 o'clock. And some people might watch it and think, well, they've just filmed a bloke stood in darkness. We haven't, yeah. But it's easy to say that because you've got nobody other than your team of people around you to sort of back you up and say, we haven't. I've just put a little bit of a TikTok one on today to talk about the short that I'm putting on. Can I just put that up, Mark, and then we'll carry on?
Yeah.
It's only 30 seconds, I think. We have a bit about Jessica's and Nick's music, so let's just play this. Oh, I'll tell you what, I'll start it from the beginning, guys. Sorry. There we go. What you're left thinking, because you've looked with your torch and you can see this thing on thermal, so it's clearly there, but you're looking with your torch where it is and it's not there. And then you take your thermal camera away, I don't know, to just scan around a little bit. When you look again, it's gone. It's not possible, is it?
No, it's
So I don't know what you think to that, Mark, because it'd be so easy to say, well, they've just filmed somebody and then they're just trying to create a film. But we're not. We take thermals with us every night. That's the first time we've ever got a figure, and he's saying, put my torch on it, I can't see it with naked eye.
Well, it's funny because the thermal aspect, like infrared, like we can't perceive in the infrared range certain, and there's certain, like a butterfly is half in the infrared and in half in a certain half perception.
What, their visual,
light
their
spectrum.
perception.
Yeah. So there's a lot of light that we can't perceive at certain frequencies. It's only light that we perceive in different vibrations of color. You know, red will be on a certain wavelength, black will be on a certain well, black is not a color, but it just doesn't emit light. It's the lack of light that we see. That's
Really?
weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when you get into optics and especially the electronics part of optics, infrared, and you know, when you look at your thermal, you're looking outside the human range of perception. So if you can see it on a thermal or an infrared, it's physically there. It's just that we can't perceive it. So you got the proof on the thermal, and yet you cannot prove it visually.
Yeah.
So that ticks a box in my mind, you know.
I'll tell you what else is interesting, Mark. But obviously, I haven't got the bit of footage to put on, but it goes on tomorrow because I've put the entirety just about of what he filmed. When he's finished, he actually scans round because he's looking for this man, this woman, this figure. Well, it looks like he's got a backpack on. But it does really have something on his back, and he can't see it. But what he can see is a fox in the distance. It's a different heat signature.
Right.
Because
that shadow it didn't have any temperature.
No. I'll tell you what you can see, Mark, occasionally when you're watching it, not on that one, but you can see odd fluctuation of white near where you perceive the face.
Because you can, with the thermal, you go through, if it's a FLIR, which is a forward-looking infrared, that's what FLIR stands for. And it's a fancy name, isn't it? But the more heat you get off, you know, like if you were to point a FLIR at me, 35 whatever degrees, and it will show it as a sort of yellow, and then as you go through the spectrum, it gets more intense.
Yeah.
So if you're at the grey area, that means there's hardly any heat coming off that source, but it's there.
It's strange, isn't it? It
there.
really is. He said it didn't unnerve him. And, you know, we've been down there and we have felt unnerved, but he said he didn't feel unnerved. He were off down because he thought it's a person. I'm going to go and speak to him. But they'd gone. But there's nowhere for them to go. I think I broke my thermal, to be honest with you. I dropped it other day. So that's...
they're expensive.
It is expensive. I won't be getting another one just yet because I've I bought a new Nikon Z, so you know what I mean. That's me done
Yeah.
for foreseeable. But anyway, there's a question
Yeah.
here. Let's just throw this up here and let's have a look. Steve Collin, the Green Man or Pan, etc., embraced by pagans, was said and still is a symbol of ecological awareness and the need to reconnect with nature. I think
Absolutely.
you've just answered
Absolutely.
your
Sorry,
own
I'm
question there.
squinting. I've got my glasses there. Well, that's you were on about nature spirits out here. We've got the tiki. I don't know if you've seen it. It's got its head on the side, its tongue out. But that's a nature spirit of made of leaves and wood. So I think reconnecting with nature, and I think the ancients had an ability to just naturally attune with nature.
Hmm.
I
So
think the evidence is there.
so the nature spirits then, Mark, where you're based, uh, uh, are they different in the descriptions and the depictions, or have we
Yeah,
got
they
very
are.
similar things to what we've got here in UK?
No, they're different, and but there's one element that is true through the Green Man in England. It's leaves and made of, but the face is a little bit different.
Mm.
But it is made of leaves and the other that they have a lot of because everyone lives near the sea. Not a lot of people and not a lot of iwi are inland. So there's a lot of nature spirits to do with the sea and whales and the calling of whales. I've got a lot of old stories about, you've probably seen it on films, of whales and sea creatures, sea
Okay,
monsters as well.
really,
Yeah.
but you've no knowledge of anybody who's told you they've seen one or any stories of that.
There's been up the Coromandel. They've seen the Bigfoot, but they call it Mau Man or something like that, I think. But it's very similar to a Bigfoot. There's quite a few accounts. People thought to begin with, because there's a lot of gold up there, it was to keep people away from setting up their own.
Yes, say that there's something like that residing up there, and you're not going to want to go and pan for gold.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm not happy about this, but because they haven't built a lot up there, they haven't encroached into that area. It's sort of an area of natural beauty, and they've kept it as a park. It's quite a large area, but there are a lot of sightings up there. This Moahow Man or something they call it. I can't remember the name, but
Is
it's
the size comparison similar
size
to?
is the same, like 8 foot, big feet.
Yeah,
And the calls as well. They hear the visuals, that whoop.
yeah,
Um,
really,
yeah,
really,
yeah.
that's
I
fascinating.
I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Just out of interest, away from just because this interests me, gold. Do you have to get a license to pan for gold, or is it? Can you just wander onto the land and do it?
You got public. The government have offset public fossicking areas, but you can get a claim or buy into a claim. And then you're free to go. But my sister lives over at Reefton, and there's heaps over there, and that they've just started a new mine, and the whole township's just exploded, and heaps of building. So if you get caught doing it over there,
You're in trouble.
yeah,
You're in trouble.
you might get shot or so. Well, I wouldn't say shot, but there's a lot of farmers who don't like you going on their land.
So Karen Behrman, Mark, do you feel you've had another life and had coincidences that have moved you onto another path that now makes you where you are now in life? Thank you.
Well, I didn't want to talk about this, but
Looks like you're gonna do now.
reincarnation. I'm big on that. I had a lot of visions when I was a kid, a lot. Um, and when I've been to certain places as well, like I travelled heaps, and I went to Olympia, which is in the Peloponnese of Greece. Um, And as I was walking underneath the stadium arch, as you go onto the stadium, I was there. I was there in the ancient times. I was like, wow, I've
How
been
old
here
were you at
before.
this time, though? When you were having that
21,
experience?
21.
21.
Yeah, just come out my time, and I'd gone abroad with a mate, and we'd gone south of France. Oh, we were all over the shop. We ended up in Egypt and Israel and Cyprus, but I, yeah, reincarnation and past life. I, I've seen a lot of visions. I've had a lot of dreams and a lot of, so that question, I was like, yep, I know where you're going with that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with synchronicity as well, and coincidences in your life, you get pushed in a certain direction, and then, or you might be listening to someone, think, yeah, I can connect with that,
Mm,
or you might pull someone in, like that. They're saying about like walk-ins, like but I don't think we know this. It's not, that our physical world is not all written in Victorian academics books. I think we're starting to understand and becoming aware of our consciousness is the driving force behind a lot of, whether it creates this phenomena or whether we perceive it through, but it's an altered state of consciousness.
mm,
And I think some people are more tuned, or maybe an older soul. If you're a younger soul, you're not into the wappy stuff that me and you are into. When you're an older soul, you start to question everything, and then you start to get on a path. And when you get on that path and you go down
mm,
these rabbit holes, it's like you find a lot of coincidences, eh?
yeah.
You do.
And do
Um,
you think they're
and
coincidences? I think, or are they just meant to be? That we would not often pass off as coincidences previously. It just everything
there's
seems
heaps of
it
them,
can't be
though.
that convenient. Do you think sometimes our life, not sometimes, do you think our lives are mapped out for us, or are we creating our own destiny?
I think we're creating our own destiny. I
Okay.
think we create our reality. I mean, if you look at the old Hermetic texts, and if you look into the old Thoth teachings and all that, I think we're awakening to that. Because if you read that book and you weren't into it, you're like, oh, this is just crazy. But when you get on that path and you start reading like the Emerald tablets and then I think the Earth goes through cycles, and they go through these, we and they're repeated cycles, and we go
Before
through
you
these big resets, you know.
before you move on, you talked about this. You were there when you went with your friend. You were 21 years old.
Yeah.
You don't have to do a book of it, but just give us a little bit more detail on that, because you touched on it and then you went away from it. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
So as I was coming under so we'd gone working abroad, and we were working in the fields for a brewery company. And we decided one day we'd go to the ancient site, because there's loads of ancient sites. It's a beautiful place, and you can just pick your spot, Argos, or you just pick your spot. And I was always drawn to Olympia because of the games. That's where they all started. So we'd gone there, beautiful hot day, and we're walking around. They got the Temple of Zeus, and you can go around the old ruins and that. It's in a bad state, really, but you can imagine what it was like. But then
Yeah.
when you come to the stadium part, they got, as you walk down, you can follow the path of the athletes, and there's like this archway. And as I was going through the archway, I got I got this vision. I got sort of sent back, and I was in the attire, which was basically nothing. And I thought, I just got this really strong feeling that I'd lived this life
Mm.
in this place.
Did you tell your friend at time?
I can't remember.
No.
I probably did, because he thought I was wappy anyway. But
Well,
I probably did, because he's quite open minded.
mm,
I
yeah,
probably did, but I
superb.
can't remember if I did or not.
So
Um,
let's we've got a question here from Rick Allen. Let's have a look. Mark, if cryptids can produce huge electromagnetic fields, could they theoretically interact with the magnetic fields of the Earth and use them as a source of power?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, everything's electromagnetic, isn't it? Everything. And I do believe that. I believe like the Earth energy increases and decreases. I mean, like we're talking about the 7.38 hertz. If something oscillates outside of that frequency, or uses the Earth energy, I mean, I just want to plant this seed. Okay. So the ancients used to build to the golden ratio. Right? You take the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, on the tip of that, if you were to think about this 100 volts per meter, that thing is 148 meters high.
Right.
And if you put a gold tip on the top of that, you would be harnessing 14.8 kilovolts and sucking that down into that machine. It is a machine.
Yeah.
There wasn't a tomb. I mean, just not a tomb.
It's incredible. I mean, obviously you can lose me and find me with this, and I know you can. I'm quite happy to say that. But I watched something, and I'm no great fan of Brian Cox or anything like that. But he were talking about the pyramid and saying how impossible it is that it could have been built by. I don't. He never said aliens, did he? But by ancient hands. I mean, who gave them that knowledge? All those blocks that weighed. How much did those?
It's too easy. It's too easy to say ancient aliens. It's too easy. I mean, I think we're not giving ourselves enough credit. I think
Okay.
what civilizations do, they rise and they fall. They rise and they fall. And that is a remnant. I think the pyramids are a remnant of an old civilization that we just haven't got a clue. I mean, they found hydrogen production and they found traces of chemicals in those shafts and those discharge chambers. I think it was a discharge chamber, to be fair. And if you look at the blocks in the king's chamber, they're all tuned. They're all tuned to 7.38 hertz.
It's
Who
incredible,
would
isn't it?
come up with that? But I don't think aliens did it.
No,
I think we should give our ancestors more credit. I don't think they were dragging each other around by the hair. I think the hunter-gatherers
and not
were the
your hair, mate.
survivors. No, well, I was, but too
And
much.
I can't complain. But I shouldn't insult my guests, should I? Sorry.
Oh,
I
but
think we can talk, can't we?
I'm a firm believer in the Earth goes through cyclical episodes of, and you get to, a civilization gets to a point and it gets wiped out, and then we're at that point now. I think
Yeah.
they've
We
already
do
known
feel
that
like we're
the Earth core stopped spinning, and there's
critical
big
mass.
holes in the magnetic field in the Atlantic, massive holes. So they know that there's going to be a flip,
No, it's
and it
terrifying,
goes.
isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's that bad, to be fair. I think we got too materialistic, and we've forgotten. I think this is the whole point: is those ancients were attuned to nature. We're not. We're not. 80% of us are sitting at home in our armchairs, giving it. I think this is the world. We haven't got a clue what's out there, really.
No.
That Gaia, the Earth, we haven't looked after her. We've polluted. We're at war with one another. And this. I don't think this is the way we're supposed to live. Being materialistic.
Well,
I'll give.
that's probably the way of things, and that could have been the way that
It's a corporate
everything's
world,
gone.
isn't it?
That's probably the way that everything's gone, and these cleansings over time.
Yeah.
So
I really don't think it's about pie charts or satellites. I really,
Mark, have you ever seen evidence of old churches from the 20th century that still had their bells? I'm trying to isolate the era they were removed.
Yeah.
So I never thought about, to be honest.
Not so much 20th century, maybe the 19th century, because it's funny you should say about bells, because I've looked into that as well. because there's churches in London, they remove the bells of certain churches because of the frequency that they create. When you look at old churches, you've got this. They got the golden ratio they've used in the building of it.
Right.
Um,
Well,
but
you might have a question for you here. You might be able to help us.
I think
Spoke about them tree structures in Dane's diet. Not structures, the trees that have been bent over, looking like a steaming process. I think you'll have heard me talking about it.
yes,
And there's a
yes,
load. There isn't as many now, of 3D printed offerings in the centre of where these trees have gone over. But the biggest of
yeah,
the lot is a bell, a 3D printed bell, which will be about 16 or 18 inch by 12 inch, at least 12 inch across, and I just don't know what significance of it would have been. It's obviously not been done on
no,
a little home 3D printer. I don't know.
that's weird, isn't it? No,
It is. I was
I don't
expecting
know.
you to have some theory on that, but
No,
let's.
no. I mean, if it was a real bell that you can smash and it made a noise, then it will be the sound it made in
Yeah,
that area.
yeah. Well, no, it,
Because
it isn't, and the other offerings were bird skulls, 3D printed, a log-eyed turtle skull, Adonis, the figures, and
yeah,
mermaid. So I don't know, but a lot of them have gone, or they're smashed up, and you can't really distinguish what they were now. So let's just have a look. What Mark Leaper,
yeah, I'm not
hi
sure.
Paul and Mark. Yorkshire and Flying Triangles have a lot of history. If there were hidden bases in Yorkshire operating these things, where would you look? I know where I would look, Mark, if there were such things. And I'm not saying there isn't, by the way, Mark. Mark's been on here talking about his incredible triangle sighting. And
That's
it really
right.
was, it's just shaped not his belief, but it's really put him on a path to look into this. I'd say under the sea. Let's assume that these are subsurface as well. I would say beneath the oceans.
There is a lot of accounts of, they call them USOs, don't they?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of even out here. Like I live in just next to the Pacific. I mean, if I walk half a k that way, I'm at the beach,
Yeah.
and there's loads of accounts of them going into the ocean.
Yeah.
There's, it's
It's
not just a
interesting, isn't
handful.
it? And
Yeah,
we haven't seen them recently, but the big orange globes out over the sea, the spheres of light, and you wonder, is that just a light emitting around an actual shaped object, or is it just a sphere of light? And I never thought about that in any great detail until I spoke to John, who had that strange experience when he was doing the military contracting, and he looked at them through high-powered binoculars, and he could see pyramids inside them. So
wow.
to the naked eye, they were just globes of yellow-orange light. But
Yeah,
in his
yeah.
binoculars, he could see pyramids. And ever since he spoke about it, I thought, is there something structured behind these things? I don't know.
Well, do you remember you were just saying about the 1.6 gigahertz signal that's embedded, like
The 1.6.
Ralston? Yeah, and they're finding this signal is prevalent in Skinwalker as well. They found underneath that dome, they found a 1.6 gigahertz signal
Yeah, well,
embedded. I don't know what.
myself and Pete Masters and Les, we went to the Rudston Monolith. Pete took his equipment to detect for the 1.6 gigahertz, and it was there. I found it too perfect. It was there on our first visit. It was there. You're looking at this sort of waveform, and bang, it's just there in the middle of his laptop. We've been again. There's nothing there. We went to Bempton. I don't know, a week later or whenever. It were at back of Bempton, at the back of the old RAF base. Went to Speeton. There's nothing. So he's been detecting. He's really got him interested, and his band of friends who are into all the electronics, and they've set some gear up at a farm in Bempton, so I'm told.
Yeah,
And I don't think they've had any luck with it so far. But interestingly, Pete's had it at his home. The signals showed
yeah.
up at his home. So
It'd be
I was looking
interesting
at
to
some
see if
military tech. Sorry, Mark, go on.
It'd be interesting to see what equipment they're using, like a spectrum analyzer, or what they're using to pick up that 1.6, because you should be able to see the 5G signal as well.
Right. Okay.
That's yeah,
Well,
and you should
if
be
you
able
want,
to
I'll put
see
you in
the
touch with
police
him.
signals and all that.
I'll put you in touch with him, and you might be you'll have a better conversation than you will with me because I've not really got a lot of knowledge of it. So, where do we want to go here? Let's have a look at this. Could it be that some? Could it not be some kind of discharge from the ground? Maybe after all, what lies beneath, we really don't know.
Well,
What
they do
question
say
would?
chalk. They say aquifers, chalk,
Hmm.
interacting as well.
There's
You
lots
know,
of chalk and limestone where we are,
yeah,
and we're on that
yeah,
Bempton fault. You know,
yeah.
it's
It, I think it has got something to do with like, when you look at these mountains here, you got a lot of quartz in the mountain. If they shift, we have a lot of earthquakes here. They call it the Shaky Isles, but if that's got a mechanical force produced, it's gonna, because people see blue lights. Well, that's the piezoelectric, I would imagine. It
mm.
will be the discharge from the quartz having that mechanical influence. And that, big lumps of quartz will generate a lot of energy, a lot of piezo
so
energy. Yeah.
so Hestalen and the lights there. And my good friend Philip Mantle's
Yeah.
of the belief that that's some kind of inner Earth movements, the tectonic plates creating these Earth lights. Yet the guy
Right.
who I wouldn't say runs the show there, but one of the main figures there at Hestalen is a good friend of Philip's, and he believes that there's some intelligence, some kind of almost knowing with these lights, and they might both be right. I don't know, but what's your views? I mean, you're saying that's piezoelectric, and the blue lights are just nothing more than Earth lights.
Well,
So
a lot of people shoot from the hip, don't they, and have the statements. I'm more on the lines of, if you can prove something scientifically, and if our science isn't at that level, then it remains unknown. But I don't think you can just say, "Oh, it's this, it's that." I think if we documentate every avenue, like if you get a repeated pattern, then you investigate the repeated pattern. It's like what I do with, when I saw that thing when I was a kid, I was like, "What?" And then I look for repeated patterns, and then that sort of points you in a direction. If you're a scientist, or like, they do know that. I mean, like that J. Allen Hynek, back in, he had the Majestic 12 or the
mm,
Project Blue Book. Um, he was a skeptic. He
his
didn't
job was
believe
to
in
debunk, weren't
anything
it?
to do with UFOs, and in the end, he was into the esoteric, and he was into all this stuff,
Mm,
and because what changed his mind? What changed him from a skeptic into this? So there must be an element of it, a reoccurring element that you go,
mm,
okay, there's a continuing pattern here.
yeah.
So with your experiences, with my experiences, you can definitely say there are some parallels. And the more you investigate these cases, it's like, wow, these things, it sort of points to like the ancient, I've got this book that the secret teachings of all ages. The stuff in there, they actually describe what we're on about.
Yeah.
And
So we're not breaking new
like,
ground at
as
all.
I don't think so. I think it's a different realm that we just switched off, or
Yeah.
like, I think we can access this realm under certain conditions, maybe in a meditation, or theta. Put the earphones on, going to theta, pumping theta, and then, but because of our fear, I think we're manipulating this phenomena into something that it's not. It's like everyone goes, "Oh, it's dev." Well, hell wasn't a place. It was a description by the Nordic. Helheim was a below realm. Um, the actual word for it in Hebrew was Sheol, and and they and when they translated that word, that meant a different realm. It didn't mean hell, and basically said, "Oh, it's hell. You're going
Yeah.
down," and then they put this fear element into it. And if you're brought up, because we're all indoctrinated in some way, shape, or form. We're brought up by our parents. We got their beliefs, and then suddenly when we reach 40, we're like, I'm not really cool with this. But then we start to, evolve into these spiritual beings who question things in a different way. I think everybody in this chat would have some form of question or even answers because
Yeah.
their truth is true for them.
Absolutely.
We're
Yeah.
looking at this truth. What's true for me is not true for you. And we're all banging on, oh, it's got to be this, got to be this. But, well, I think if we all meet in the middle and say, hey, what's true for me works for me,
Mm.
I'm happy, I'm comfortable in my beliefs. And then suddenly you'll get an experience that will take you out of that belief into another sort
Yeah.
of path.
Absolutely. You think you've got an handle on it, and then it shoots off in another direction.
Yeah,
It
you'll
really
never.
does. Just before a few questions here, but just before we go to them, I spoke to you.
Yeah.
I don't know, about 2 weeks ago, and I said to you, why don't you consider doing a live stream or starting something like what we're doing with Truth Proof, because you've got a really relaxed way about you, Mark. And you said you'd already been thinking about it. Have you given it any more thought?
Yeah, I have actually, Paul. Yeah, I've been thinking about starting a channel sort of along the lines of Paranormal Minds. It was the name and looking at the different aspects of not,
Look at that. It's just froze. Unless I've froze.
but looking at the history and the. And maybe going through different, like the Stagman or the Moon. The Moon Man's a great one. I don't know if you've heard of him. But all these different deities through the ages, and there was still like the accounts from the 1800s, 1900s. The Victorians were big into the Moon Man.
So the Moon Man.
Crazy. Moon
Moon.
Man, look it up.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, we'll touch on
it's
Moon Man in a minute then.
it's
So it's Paranormal
it's
Minds
an
is what?
English cryptid.
Yeah, the Moon Man.
Yeah,
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 talking about
yeah,
Buzz Aldridge. Paranormal Minds. That's
yeah,
what you're going to call it. That's good. So
yeah.
what we've got, anybody in chat? We've got 300 people in chat. So if Mark starts this, we need to give him another plug and get him on with this. So yeah, it might just be sort of
Fantastic.
bit of a leg up that you need there, Mark. And just while we're on with it, people, I say it every week. I never used to say it, and I know Alison and Gemma and Lee say it. But if you've not pressed subscribe or like and subscribe, just consider doing it. It's totally free. Just there again, you just give it a little press. We would appreciate it. And I'll just do this about my books while I'm here, because I usually forget. Truthproof.uk if you want to buy these books, and there's 4 of the books with everybody's reports in and everything else. That's the first one, and this one's about my own experiences and that of my family's experiences, to be honest with you. The Night People and Wolfland's DVD that myself and Les made, that's on truthproof.uk or on Amazon Prime as a download, and obviously you can get the books on Amazon Kindle as well. So that's my little plug over. And I'm looking forward to starting this channel. Are you going to let me come on and have a natter?
Yeah, I'll get you on, Paul.
Yeah,
We'll talk rubbish for an hour or so.
Did you hear that? He's just insulted me now. Yep. So we'll get another. No, we'll get this question up. Mark, what's your favourite cryptid in New Zealand? Interesting to see they have the Moo Man.
Mohound, man, that's it. Yeah.
That large ape-like being. Well, you did touch on that, but do you have a favourite of sorts of anything like that?
My favourite was seen by my sister and brother back in '95. They just, I live near a place called Rangiora, which is inland a little bit. It's on a river. So they'd gone to a meeting about 9 o'clock. And they finished their meeting. They were driving back through the country, and funnily enough, the area they saw this thing is under a high tension line. That's what I noticed, and it's got a stream running by it. Now, they called it the wobbly man. But what it was is it was a torso and a head, but it had lights running down it. So it had, if you can imagine the chakras, and they were coloured, but it was shimmering. It was like I wouldn't say predator, but you know when that thing shimmers.
It's a cloaking type effect.
So they come to this junction and they looked. My sister was driving. She looked over her right shoulder and she said, "Michael, what is that?" And this thing was coming quite fast at them. And Michael said it sort of appeared. It sort of. It was as if it was coming out of the realm. You know what I mean? It was in
it was
between realms.
materializing. It was materializing.
Materializing out of this, but it was right by the river part. And there have been 2 incidences of this particular entity or whatever, but the lights are quite interesting, eh? Like
Absolutely.
where the lights were where the chakras would be in you know, when you look at the old drawings.
I'm interested. You said a torso and a head. What about? Did it have arms and legs?
No, it just the torso and the head. But it was real. I mean, it's as if the arms hadn't come through yet, or the legs, and you know, So it was just a torso, and it appeared to be floating, and it came towards them, and that was in 1995, so some years ago.
So although this is kind of wobbly, its actual movement was fluid.
Was towards them.
Yeah, and it was fluid. I'm just thinking of drawing comparisons. Once again, we talked about the similarities with the unexplained, and you talk about the Bigfoot, and people talk about them almost floating, like moving on a track. Do you know? And I'm not saying that's Bigfoot, by the way. It's just we talked about the threads of the same going through all the genres of the unexplained earlier, didn't we? Before we come on here,
it was big. It was big as well. It was 7 or 8 foot off the ground.
I've never heard of anything like that. That's fascinating, isn't it? I dare say people in chat might have, but
I have to say that because it was my sister's account. But you know, and I never like, you know, you wouldn't say your sister's crazy or anything, but like my brother saw it as well.
Yeah,
you know?
It's when I say it's crazy, I don't mean they are. It's crazy the different reports that people talk about and report seeing and experiencing. But then we've got the similar reports. If you talked about if we were hallucinating, we must all be hallucinating a similar thing. Why do you think people always see an old hag when they talk about the incubus, succubus? Not necessarily an old hag, but it's always something similar, isn't it?
Yeah. The fascinating thing for me was that high tension line and the water. So the high tension line goes over, the water's directly underneath it, and where they saw this thing was in that spot. So was it using those energy? It's quite interesting.
It is interesting, and I don't know about high tension lines, but I've noted with the cryptid sightings, particularly the ones that we've looked into in North Yorkshire, they're close to running water. You know, and you've got running
aquifers. Do you remember we talked about that before, Paul? You were saying, there's an aquifer under Gypsy's Race. You know, the Gypsy Race.
Yeah, the Gypsy Race.
Yeah, where you got the cursors that come round.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think. I think if you look on LiDAR, you can make out the cursor around Rudston. You know, like you got at Stonehenge, you got those cursors that come in. Yeah. Well, they've got the same at Rudston. So if you get, I think LiDAR finder, you can see the cursors coming in, but also you can track the Gypsy Race as well. And it's quite interesting that both those meet at that stone.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And you know, I think they said that the cursors at Rudston, what they've looked at on LiDAR, they're bigger than the ones you've just been on about. I think it's quite.
Yeah, they are. That's true. Yeah, that's true.
So it's been an important site, hasn't it? You know, the Gypsy Race.
Actually, Paul, you just reminded me. I think those cursors end up at Willie Howe.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think
Right,
if you look on LiDAR, you can trace it down. Yeah.
right. So that's
See,
a
we're
monstrous
getting
area.
the scientific proof now. Like with Google Earth, you can go into Google Earth, and then you can plot all the ancient sites, and then you can draw lines, and they're all on angles. Like the Silbury Hill, Rudston, and Castle Rig are all on a 3-4-5 triangle. So how did they
How
do
did they
that?
know?
How did
Yeah.
they do that?
Do you think then a lot of the what we call unexplained phenomena, obviously it's just science just hasn't caught up with how to detect it and how to solve what it is, and it still might be equally spectacular when we do.
I think the evidence is there as well, because the French call us Angleterre, which is the land of angles.
Right, the
Yeah,
land of
so
angles. Let's have a look
yeah,
at this. So
or the
Martin
land of
says,
natters.
"Hi Paul, Mark. Do you think the military or some other government contractors could have been testing cloaking technology?" I think he's on about the figure. And do you know? I think it's difficult. We'll not know, will we, Martin? But there's a possibility. But I mean, Jeremy came away
Yeah.
thinking that he'd seen it through his thermal a figure of, we'll not say a man or a woman, a figure basically. And biggest problem for me is,
How tall do you think that figure was, Paul?
well, I did ask him that. I said, how tall? I said, how tall is it? I said, because some people might turn around to you and say, oh, it's just a rabbit stood up on a path or something. Do you know? I know it works, but you know.
Yeah,
And he says, no. He says it was as
but
tall as a person. He says it'd be a small person, but it's tall as a person because it were a lot further down
right,
than the fence posts. And all he did
right,
was just look away, you know, and look back, and it had gone. And you know, he's
right.
looking at it. There must be 15 to 20 seconds where he's looking at it, and he's gone through a few color palettes looking at it. And you know, you can hear him going, "What's that?" I think it's a person. You know, but
Yeah.
what Martin said, could it be somebody testing some tech? Could be.
You know, Martin, I wouldn't put it past any of them. I mean, what they get up to is anybody's guess, isn't it? I mean, it could be, can it? Yeah,
Well, the thing is as well, you know, we've all filmed things up there, and probably one of the best things that's been filmed is Linny's footage of that sphere on thermal.
yeah, yeah.
And it wouldn't
Saw
disappoint
that.
me if we were to find out that that was some military tech that were being tested. It doesn't have to come from another
Yeah,
planet to be interesting to me. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
yeah. No, I
what
agree. Yeah,
is fascinating, Mark, and you'll know this better than me, is the tech that we're being able to get now as laymen. Is we're there, we're on the ball, we're able to see
yeah.
things that we wouldn't normally see. The thermal cameras
Well,
point in question.
it's fascinating because I've worked on I used to work for a Swiss company, Grapher AG. Um, oh, I worked for them for 10 years, and the stuff they were working on was unbelievable. They had a military contract as well, because we used to use a lot of signature recognition tools for the printing industry. And like if you had signatures going down, and they're going down quite fast, like 50,000 copies an hour, and we had a camera that could look at the signature and detect if one of them was wrong. Say someone put a login upside down,
Yeah.
or the wrong signature in the wrong hopper, it could detect that and reject it. So we had a lot of fancy electronics, but they were involved in some really way out stuff, and we don't know, what goes on behind closed doors, really, especially around frequencies and that. I mean, we had a microwave dryer that's probably why I've lost my hair, because when you walk past it, your watch used to spin, like the
Oh.
handles on you used to spin, and you feel if you're wearing a chain or anything, you get it was man.
You
I
want
mean,
a metal hip, or else you'd be glued to it.
no wonder I've got no hair.
Yeah.
Mind you, it
No
might have
worries.
been all the belts I've had over the years.
Let's just. Are you all right for time, Mark?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, you
Okay.
go for it.
Right, John Paul Body. Hi, Mark. I like your thinking of the Norse mythology in regards to the realms. Could it be an indicator of multiple worlds, stroke dimensions around us all of the time?
Well, yeah. When you look at their mythology, and I sent you that picture a couple of
I've
weeks
not got
ago.
it. I've not got it to hand. And to be honest with you, sorry, Mark.
It's all right, but it shows Midgard in the middle, But you've got all these other, like you got Elfheim. Like people say, "Oh, I saw an elf," "Oh, I saw a gnome." I saw, like, there's a count in Canada, and these little gnomes were like 2 foot, all march in a straight line past him. A portal opened up, like this purple portal, and they all disappeared into it. And he was like, and he was in the middle of nowhere, and he's like, what's all this about?" Well, they have actually got a realm for these things. So, like Elfheim, they've got the bad elves as well, the dark. I can't remember, but I'll have to have a look. But you got Asgard, you got Valhalla, and you got, but they're all on different points of the campus, which was quite interesting. If you look at the magnetics as well, and it's fascinating once you get down that journey of the old Nordic beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's fascinating. I mean, especially, look at our week. Monday's Moon Day, Tuesday, which is the Nordic god. Wednesday's Woden's Day, which is Odin. Thursday's Thor's Day. Friday's, Freya. We're still
So
using
it's
pagan.
all Norse names for our days of the week. Yeah.
And our months, Janus, which is the god of war. Februas it's Latin, but he was a bad bugger too. Then you had like we only had 10 months of a year, and then they added because like December's 10, November's 9. You know what I mean? September's, so we've added 2 months, but we like the December being the 12th month, and yet in Decky is 10. It don't make sense, does it? Like,
no. I noticed
it's all based on old ancient
you
paganism, isn't
well,
it?
when we, you're right. And when we made Wolflands, and I were looking into the areas where people had seen these cryptids, these, for want of a better word, the werewolf, which can't exist, can it? But it can, because people keep reporting it, and they're not all liars. Do you know? It just never fails to amaze me, this subject. But a lot of the names for the locations around these areas were all Norse names. The more rig, and I can't think of them all off the top of my head, but I did a map, didn't I, for Wolflands, and I used all the Norse terminology on it, because that were the place names.
We talked about Humberby before, so anything ending in BY is a settlement. So it's a settlement.
Hund is the dog, hound,
hunters.
Hundman. Well, it was
hound.
Farmstead of the Houndman, Houndman, which is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it said the probability was
Oscarby, you got all these, Anlaby, which is just outside Hull. Anlaby was King Anlab.
Right.
That area was named after King Anlab. And then you got Skidby, you've got Oscarby, you've got all these ending in BY, which are all
settlements,
your Danish settlement, or your Dane settlements. So when they came across, they brought their they didn't bring Christianity across. They brought their beliefs in paganism, and that's what offset it to the Celts, because the Celts had a similar belief system. So somewhere along the line, it might have been Doggerland that kept these two in connection, because there's a lot of beliefs that do go across.
Yeah.
And emulated in the stonework in the Scandinavian regions and in Ireland. There's a lot of similarities.
Could it be that some kind of, as Shadow says, could it be that some kind of energy discharged from beneath the ground, in terms, if it was seen on the thermal, could it be some kind of energy? Yeah, it just took the shape of a man, though, hasn't it, or a woman? What lies beneath, we really don't know in that location. But you're right. I mean, all we can do, Shadow, is speculate. I just find it fascinating, Mark, Shadow, everybody in chat, that he's got a torch that's more than capable of going past the distance of what he's looking at on thermal, and it's not there. And it's not like he's looking through a scope like I do with the pulsar, or I did until I dropped it. You know, he's actually looking at a screen, so he's going, "It's there. It's not there." That's what.
Yeah.
There's been occasions when we've seen. There were one occasion. I'm dying to get Jeremy on here to talk about this. He pulled into the top car park because he got a phone call. If you go into the bottom phone car park, you lose your reception. So there was nobody in. It's pitch black. It's winter, just after Christmas, and he pulled long ways across the parking bays because there's no other cars in. Mark takes his call. It's just about 12-month-old, his car. It might be 18 now, but it'd been less than. So it's a new car. So I'm saying it'll make sense. All the doors luckily locked on it. So he takes the call in the darkness. The back door handle of the car went up and made a right and tried it, which obviously startled him. He put the lights, push button start, started the car, lights on. There's nobody there. The chances are it's somebody. We've got to say it's probably not paranormal, but that unnerved him. Now that same night, because we usually indicate with our torches where we are for certain people that are coming. We don't mean we don't do it for others, but we know certain people are coming, so we'll put a torch on because we don't want them wandering off into darkness in opposite direction along cliff tops. So we thought this is going to be Jeremy. But with the car stopped, so we thought, no, it's not him. Then headlights come on, and then it went down into bottom car park. And the next thing, there's a torch on path. Jeremy never uses a torch, hardly ever. That was one thing you noted with him. This guy's got a torch. So I put the thermal on, and I say to Ian, and I think Pete were there. I said, well, it's not Jeremy because there's two of them. There's one behind him. I don't know what distance. It could be 20 foot. It could be 10 foot. But because you're looking fair way away, you're just two white heat signatures. Comes along path, all agitated and all nervous, not like him at all. And told us this story about the car handle being tried. Says there was somebody behind you. He says there weren't. I was swiping my torch all the way. Yeah, I wish I'd have filmed it. And then again, it would have only been my words saying it. Well, we'd have had that bit on film, but you're always going to get somebody sat there who know better than you, Mark, and everybody in chat are going to say, yeah, but you're just saying it and you filmed two people and you've just made that up. You can't win. But that's how it happened. Yeah. And we've seen that a few times, not just on one thermal, on two, where somebody's come and we said there's two of them, and when they've arrived, there's only one. So
did you know that shadow on the thermal? Did he feel anything? Was there a feeling of?
Nope. He said he was just surprised. Do you want to play? Shall we play it again?
Yeah.
If people won't mind, will they? Let's just have another look. We don't have to go all the way through it if you don't want to.
It's a pity he didn't walk up to it.
He wanted to. Oh, it stopped. Why is that? Sorry about that,
Invisible.
People.
It does look as if it's got something on its back as well.
Yeah, but you're left thinking because you've looked with your torch and you can see this thing on thermal, so it's clearly there, but you're looking with your torch where it is and it's not there. And then you take your thermal camera away, I don't know, to just scan around a little bit. When you look again, it's gone. No. It's not possible, is it?
No,
Definitely looks like it's got something on its back.
It does. And you'll hear him say on the film, which you're not seeing today, I better walk towards it. I'm not going to know unless
there's a gap. If you look closely, there's a gap where its arm. I think its arms like this.
I think so. Yeah. So what I think it was Martin that said anyway earlier. Could it be somebody testing some kind of kit? I don't see. That's not out of the realms of impossibility, is it? You know.
No. Especially, you know, with that backpack, it looked like, you know, when they in the Falklands War they wore them backpacks. And you see it, he's got the aerial with the flag on it. It looked like one of those, didn't it?
Yeah, I suppose we're never going to know, are we? Unless we've managed to film it again. Do you know what I mean? But we're not going to know, are we? And
was any of you lot wearing backpacks that night?
We all take them, but we've all been together. Only one that were on his own was Jeremy.
He wouldn't have come across us. He's gone down the cliffs towards Flamborough. We know exactly where he is, and in fact, I think he was there before us that night.
I just thought, you know,
Yeah,
when
no, it
things
definitely
mimic,
couldn't have been
you
us.
know, when you get mimics and they
Yeah.
mimic your voice, or you heard someone say Paul
Yeah.
that time, and you get these mimics, don't you? I wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just.
It's I don't know. It's fascinating, isn't it? You know what I mean? I just can't get
Yeah.
my head around what he's filmed. But I do think, let's jump away from the woo and the aliens and I've said shadow figure. It is a shadow figure, but it doesn't mean that it's not a man in some kind of strange military tech that they're testing. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's just have a look at this. So I'll put that up, but it's not really a question, is it? Zaphoid, Beeblebrox. Kestrels can see in ultraviolet. I didn't know that, mate, and thank you. Don't panic. I like the thumbnail as well. So let's have a look at this. Are we okay for another half an hour, Mark?
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bells refer to the excommunication ritual. Bell, book, and candle from the Latin Church for someone who had created a mortal sin. Listen to Steve. Well done, Steve. Thank you. I didn't know any of that, but he always comes out with something that surprises me, does Steve. Steve's the guy who sat on Willie Howe having a coffee and heard the movement, the sounds below him, which is interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. It's crazy.
We'll just scroll down a bit, Mark, and I just want, if there are no more questions, oh, there are questions. Let's have a look here. Were any more lights seen between the South and North Island as seen on the Argos? Go on, Mark.
Yeah, so that was in off the coast of Kaikoura, and they actually filmed this thing. But there are quite a few sightings since then. Yeah,
And are they lights
regular as well. So around that area, Kaikoura, and in north you've got Blenheim, and then you've got the North Island. So there's always accounts in newspapers, or I mean, now with social media, you can see them on there. Similar things, yeah, similar accounts. Out here, they're like you say about those orange orbs and that.
Yeah.
There's quite a few accounts of orange orbs. Yeah.
And there's orange orbs. The thing is as well, Mark, that the orange orbs, the light form phenomena, they're prevalent in all places of the world. And going back through times, people talk about orange orbs, don't they? Or orange to red orbs, or orange to yellow orbs. It seems to be the staple colour. I know that people see white orbs and blue, but orange.
Yeah, and it's funny because, you know, like red, like if you got the lower frequency red color, then you got the orange, you know, you go for red, yellow, orange. So it's obviously on a certain frequency that because the Bigfoot phenomena that they all say about the orange orbs that they see, or the lights they see after the event, or, you know.
Do you think it's a shame, Mark, that UFO organizations, not just one, but many of them, won't entertain the cryptid phenomena, even when in some instances people report seeing a UFO, report seeing something like you describe as a Bigfoot, or the opposite?
Yeah.
The two don't seem to want to merge, and there's that gap in that research. Is what's stopping it moving forward.
Yeah, there's a few accounts where they actually, if they're taken on board an abductee, they actually say, "I saw this Bigfoot on there. He was on the craft."
It's nuts, isn't it? You know, we got one from North Yorkshire, actually, from Michael, who said he'll come on and talk about it. And at some point, that's the guy that was camping that saw these things that his children called hairy Chewbaccas. You know?
Yeah.
But, so we just got that from Steve. North Yorkshire Moors, the Moon Man. So Steve must know something about that. So I'll have a natter to you in week, Steve. I've got a few visits this week to various places, but
Thanks everybody for information that you're sending in. I got an amazing report today coming, and I've replied to you, and I will get round to it. I'm hoping to go to Hummonby tomorrow to speak to a lady, seen some triangular shaped craft. It's hospital tomorrow.
Wow.
Correct yourself, Paul. It's hospital tomorrow, Hummonby Tuesday. So need to get that in order. That's most priority is the hospital. I'm just running down here because otherwise, all right, studio, let's have a look. Mark, do you believe ley lines could be actual energy lines or simply drawn lines on a map with coincidental demarcations between the 2 points?
I think they're actually energy lines. I do believe that.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you plot on Google Earth, it becomes quite apparent because you can transpose from the because NASA and NOAA, they call this site NOAA. Well, they produce the magnetic signature of the Earth. You can transpose that onto the top of the UK, and you see the energy lines go. It's
So
quite.
that is science, then,
It's
isn't
not
it?
a coincidence.
Yeah, but that's interesting, isn't it? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
and you know this, and but by the
Go on.
way, that the center, the 0 degree point of those energy lines goes straight through the middle of that Giza pyramid in Egypt.
Really?
Yeah. It's
How
quite
could
fascinating,
anybody know that? How could that knowledge be attained? I know people, like you said, let's forget about ancient aliens, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but it does point then, if we forget about alien technology, it does point to other civilizations that have been far more advanced than us. But
Yeah,
in which
you can
case
see that
then,
in their building techniques, though. 'Cause, you know, these blocks that they look as if they've been poured. They haven't been like they said. Oh, they use copper chisels and that. But when you actually look from an engineering aspect, you actually look at it and say that those. I mean, you're talking about, you know, Baalbek. It is a prime example. 1,000-ton stone. You know, in the Temple of Jupiter. You know, who's going to carve that out of copper? You know
yeah,
what I mean, you got to go. You got to draw the line somewhere. Say, come on,
do
guys,
you know
come on.
something?
Let's be serious here.
You're right, but that's science, though, coming up with a plausible,
Yeah.
or what they
Well,
think is a
they can't.
plausible
Well,
explanation.
it's because they can't find the artifacts that actually built them. I mean, if you've been wiped out, if you've had a reset, everything's going to be like 30 foot under mud anyway, isn't it? I mean, they're finding like fauna buried in ice up in Alaska that was eating its last meal. You know, it's like they go down digging because they're looking for gold, and they find a woolly mammoth eating some buttercups, and it's like it was flash frozen. It was like
Okay. Yeah,
bang.
but so why haven't we got the evidence of these other civilizations then? A mammoth eating
I think
buttercups is not some kind of super tech
I think
civilization.
I mean, if you go down, I yeah, it's a good question. I don't know, but they are. I think a lot of it has been covered up. You know, they called Albion the land of giants, and they did find giant skeletons. You know,
Right,
7 foot.
okay.
I think the biggest one they found was up in near Hadrian's Wall, which was 20 odd foot, and it was all
I,
covered up. You know, they
that's
You know,
crazy,
and
isn't
there
it?
is evidence that, you know, and all the literature is around there. I mean, it's even in the newspapers. Anybody could look it up and go, well, like those barrows, like if you look at the one near Silbury Hill, West Kennet, you know, it's probably about 30 meters long, something like that.
Hmm.
You know, what were those barrows originally for? You know,
Well, what do you think Dane's Dyke was for? It's 2.5 miles long. A 2.5 mile earthwork that ranges from 20 to 40 foot along its entire length. I mean, it'd be quite a feat. By today's standards, we know it could be done with heavy machinery, but it's supposed to be done with bone and antler tools.
You know,
Mm.
well, I suppose it was, but why? What were it for? What was the significance?
Just on that head of land as well, wasn't it? I mean,
On the
like the
peninsula,
Flamber.
Flamborough Head, yeah. And
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like it's a rich in nutrients, the earth, and it grows amazing crops because you've got North Sea battering it. All trees look like they've got arthritis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I guess
Was
thousands
it
of years ago it
was
could
it
have been
keeping
different.
someone in or keeping someone out? You know,
But,
it's
absolutely, but that's the kind of question that I've said myself. What we got here? Could it be military testing on showcasing black technology, knowing you're up there testing reactions? I don't know, Tim. I don't think we're that important, mate. I think they could test their reactions on another. I think the thing to do would be to test some kind of kit like that. I mean, you tell me if you think I'm wrong, Mark, or in chat, on another military unit that's got no knowledge of it, trained military personnel, and see how they react to seeing something like that. Not
yeah.
a 63-year-old bloke and on cliff tops at Bempton. And I don't know. I like
You
your
would have
thinking.
you would have thought if they're going to test it, it's going to be like when people say about these UFOs that we back engineered, they'd be testing them on military sites. They wouldn't be testing them over large civilian areas, or like if you're going to test it, wouldn't you test it, in your own environment? To
Linny, who comes up there with us, I see just a few comments down. Could be military showcasing black technology. Very possible. We have talked about it, thanks. So obviously Linny spends a lot of time, well, as much time as I do up there. That's his actual face, that Mark, as well. That's what he looks like on that thumbnail. And well, it's not as good looking as that, but it's close. But the point is, we have talked about that kind of thing. You know, with Thermal, he filmed that incredible sphere, didn't he? Could that have been military tech? I suppose that's a possibility. I'm not sure about. I don't know. It's difficult. You know, Tim could be right. I mean, all we're doing is speculating, aren't we? I don't know. There was something there in the shape of a person. I'm not saying man.
Yeah.
I'd probably get upset. Some people if I say a man, person. Just right. Here we go. Let's have a look.
Interesting that you couldn't see it with your, naked eye.
No, that's and the torch, as I say, we spend quite a bit of money on kit, and it's got a powerful torch. It's way past the distance where he's looking at, and there was nothing there. Plus, the interesting part, Mark, is the heat signature of the fox that he gets when he's scanning round. Excuse me, that's deep black. That's because he's. But anyway, well, let's just look at this. RE backpack image would be interesting to see a deer similar on thermal. Well, I didn't realize that's what you were saying because I've just put question up. We do have a fox in the bit of footage that'll go up tomorrow. Be only for a few seconds, but it's clearly a fox, and it's a lot different heat signature. That wouldn't have a backpack wouldn't have a heat signature. Yeah, you're right, mate. Not necessarily, but there again, I don't know, because body heat could be transferred to it, because you look at a rock and you're looking around with a thermal and you'll suddenly look at a rock and it's glowing and it's just retaining a bit of body heat, isn't it?
There's not a lot of heat in that signature, though.
That and it's pretty even,
figure,
isn't it? Everything's even, isn't it?
If you look at the grass and everything that surrounds it, it's only just a little bit warmer, I suppose.
All right, Cooper's World. When is your next Skywatch, Paul? Would love to join you. All regards, Darren Cooper. Hey up, Darren. Good to see you here, mate. And we need to get Darren on here and talk about his sighting at some point. I'd love that.
Is that what you saw, that triangle?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And but the thing is, Mark, we don't really have Skywatchers as such. We just go up there, mate. And we just go up there and observe, and sometimes we'll be away at 10 o'clock. If it's active, if we perceive, even if nothing's, you'll know this, Mark, and people in chat know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're researching or what's the word, or just observing in these areas, sometimes you just got that feeling. It's buzzing. You know that there's a connection there, and you'll stay longer. Yeah. Even if nothing happens, you'll stay longer.
What equipment do you use, Paul? Do you use like infrared or?
Yeah, we've got a Psionics low light camera. We've got some cheap ones from China. I bought 2 of them. That
quite honestly, the quality is not as good as the psionics, but they can actually just about darkness. You can see things with this. It was a pulsar thermal, or I did until I dropped it. I don't think that's coming back, to be honest with you. It's not. I've got a Sony VX, not a Sony VX, Sony NX80 with night shot on it. Don't use that very much. I've just bought that Nikon Z, which is nice. So yeah, and just a selection of other equipment. What do they call them? Tri-field meters and other things like that. Your radiation detectors. You just set things up, and most of the time, do you know what? Zilch, nothing happens. But occasionally, you just get a hit, and that's what makes it all worthwhile. We know the reality of what we're doing. I knew the reality of it on, I think it was Monday night. We set the cameras up, and I'd set one of these cheap cameras up on us, and I just we'd packed up, and I'm just driving home, and I just got within 3 or 4 minutes of home, and in my head I just saw camera on fence on cliff tops at Bempton. I just couldn't believe it. You were late. Turned car around. I rang Pete. I said, I'm going up there I've left a camera up there on a fence. It wouldn't have been there, it would have gone. I says, I'm off back. I says, I'm only telling you, Pete, just in case I don't come back. And you can tell my wife, Mary, I did set off back for camera. So there I am, puffing and blowing along cliff tops close to midnight there to get this camera back. Well, we got it. And, so he said, moral of the story is check you've got all your gear before you leave, which I didn't do. I've done it. That's twice I've done that. I did it once with psionics. That was £1,000 camera. So I had to go back for that one. But I'd have gone back for it if it were a £10 camera, me. I'll be honest with you. I just don't like leaving stuff.
Well, at least you keep him fit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just moving. Oh, we're just moving on. I think we've got a cup of tea. Everything okay? Oh, thank you. Are you all right for time, Mark? You all right for 20 minutes?
Yeah.
All right, let's have a look.
Yeah.
Let's have a look here. Yeah, if you need a drink or out, Mark, just disappear and we'll be back. Most of the evidence of previous civilizations is underwater. Yeah, it makes a great point. Everything's changed, hasn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And let's have a look here. Have you bumped into the Astrodog astronomy group on Bempton Cliffs? Be interesting to know if they've experienced anything. I've not bumped into them, but they must have bumped into me because they've added me as a friend, and they tag me when they're putting out on. You get a little notification. We did know that they were going up there doing their astronomy, the sky watchers, so we made sure we weren't there. Not out of badness. We just, to be honest with you, we didn't want to pollute the sky with any lights or torches for the guys that are going up there doing that. So that's the exact reason. And they don't go up that much, so it's not affecting us at all. There's plenty of places we can go. We are having to bother them or them bother us. Let's have a look. I think we've just about done with questions. So I want to jump now, if I could. If you don't mind telling us a little bit, you told us before about the Green Man sighting because it caused so much interest when you don't have to do every bit of it, Mark. We've got like 15, 20 minutes if you want to have a little natter about it and just tell people, because this is how we became acquainted, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I've been wanting to share it for a long time because I never really. I spoke to my dad about it. But none of my friends, because I don't know how people would react to.
Are you happy enough to talk about it again now for 5-10 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So we'd in those days it was a new estate that we were living on, and there was this woodland at the back of our property that we used to go and play in. And it had a meadow sort of in the middle of it. We used to ask this lady if we could play on the land. An old lady who lived in an old Tudor cottage. So we used to knock on her door and say, "Hey, can we play on your land?" And she was lovely. Always let us play. And we wanted to make a swing on this because it had an oak tree right in the middle of this meadow. And we wanted to make a swing on it. So we asked the lads across the road if they would help us. And we had this ladder, big ladder, put the swing up. And as we were walking back, I remember it was a sunny day, middle of summer, and it's the 1976 summer, so you remember that one. It was a drought to get everyone run out of water,
Gotcha.
and I was right at the back because I couldn't hold the ladder, and something just caught my eye, and I saw this pattern of it looked like the ribbons of energy that you get off the sun, as they swirl like that. And that was coming out of an area at the edge of this meadow. And then I saw lights coming out, like orbs,
What colour were
different
they?
colours.
All right.
Yeah, different colours. I mean, but the colours didn't emanate from the middle of the orbs. The orb in the middle was bright, like white. It was just around the outside that sort of the colour came
Right.
out of. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
So then that you piqued my interest, and I wandered over. Now there was this big tree to my left. I mean, I'm stood right on like the roots of this big tree, and then I was looking down at the time, but I thought they feet. And then as I followed the shape up, and I remember craning my neck like that. And I'm looking now. I said this thing was 7 foot. It could have been 20. It could be. You know what I mean? I've got no perception of height, but
Yeah.
all I know is I'm craning my neck to
Seeing it.
look at this thing, and its face was just made of leaves, and like the skin was like green as well. Greeny brown.
So there were an actual
and
inference of skin then, not just leaves.
where it did have sort of its face. I mean, it had leaves here, and you could make out the mouth, but the nose was really big. The nose was like all bulbous, big nose.
And you're stood. Are you stood on its feet or just offset from
I'm
its
right
feet?
at its feet. Yeah, I'm right at its feet. Yeah, like literally, not even a meter.
And
I remember looking up, and then that's when the fear because it was so big. It was massive. It was, and the eyes striking blue, like when you see crystals, it was like real crystalline, and you're smiling.
oh, it's smiling.
Mm.
And was it a knowing, nice smile or a menacing smile? I suppose as a little boy, you might take it wrong way even.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it didn't, it just had it wasn't grinning, or it just had this like smile, like it didn't bare its teeth or anything. Yeah, it was. Oh man, but I was afraid. I ran off. But when you think back to that episode, was I taken out of a scenario, or my conscious? I mean, and then later on, around the same time, I saw that orb in my bedroom, that big, basketball size orb, and that was weird. But I think that was all it. And then I used to get dreams that, like, the dreams.
This is after seeing the Green Man.
Yeah, and I used to see Bigfoot in my kitchen. Like I'd be absolutely. I think I can't go downstairs, and I'd have a dream.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
And at the time, I thought it was a bear, but it was stood on its hind legs, and it was covered in fur. And it was in my kitchen, and I thought, he's going to come up and get me. And because I used to get that heartbeat in my ear, and that used to
That's
I
proper fear, isn't it? And that's interesting, though, isn't it? That you saw the green man, you saw the orbs, and as a little boy, do you think why would you have known how to dream something like the Bigfoot? That's what I'm thinking. How would you have
it was
known?
about
What the programs on TV like that could have connected it for you?
I was 6, so and I was absolutely terrified of Doctor Who. You know the
Right.
music. As soon as I heard that music, I was off.
Mm.
It used to frighten me, you know. And then I used to go and hide. Um, but yeah, you don't know. I could have seen something on the telly, can I? I mean,
Yeah, but that doesn't detract from the fact that what you saw in front of that tree or part of the tree, it looked like it were molded into the tree. I think I don't know.
no, it was separate. It was separate to the tree.
Separate.
It
And,
was,
but
yeah.
that weren't a dream, though, Mark, was it? That were real.
No, no. And this thing in the kitchen downstairs was it had fur.
Yeah, but that was a
It
dream.
was, but I thought it was a bear. But you know, the more I look back on it, because it stood up.
Mm.
So
Well, in North
I
Yorkshire,
mean,
we've got the Barguest, haven't we? The bear, the Barguest, and people talk
right,
about that in folklore. This huge fur-covered bipedal creature, the Barguest, and that people have interpreted it as bear guest.
right.
And there's a Norse word for it as well, but I can't think what that is. But when you think about it, they thought that they were seeing a bear, and they weren't actually seeing a bear. They were seeing something akin to the Bigfoot or the werewolf phenomena.
Um,
You know, because
it could well, because I never saw its face. I thought, is it a bear or is it? I mean, at first I thought it was a bear. It was, you know, and like
yeah,
8 foot type
well, that's what
thing.
I'm trying to distinguish here, Mark. Was that the dream?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's in the
yeah,
dream. Yeah, the
yeah.
reality was the green man was there in front of you. Yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
don't know how you would
I
dream
it,
such a
it,
thing.
it yeah. But after that event, I got night terrors. I can't remember night terrors before that, but after that, I'd had night terrors every night. I had nightmares every night. Wake up sweating and yeah, every single night I'd have a nightmare.
Did you know the old
Yeah,
lady who you let you play on the land? As you sort of got
yeah.
older, did you ever feel like asking her if she'd ever seen anything or if there was any
I'd
reports
love,
of anything?
I'd love to. You know, I'd love to go back now because it was so isolated as well back in those days. Um, there are interesting reports as well from that area. That like High Wycombe was Strike Command or RAF Nap Hill. It was Strike Command in the Second World War. And as the Germans were bombing London, they would go over and then try and hit the Strike Command area. So we used to play in these bomb sites as
Right.
kids. We used to give them names like Big Ben and things like that. And my friend saw a Spitfire going down. He said, I know it's a Spitfire. It was a ghost of a Spitfire
Yeah.
going down. And there was this, just out the back of Terriers, there was this downed aircraft and it was all robbed out. Had no instruments, nothing, no
Yeah.
propeller, no seat in it. It was just a carcass. And we used to play in it. Um, and it was where this Spitfire had gone down.
But
Yeah.
do you find that odd? That I mean, I may be missing the point here, but how can a ghost of a Spitfire? I expect ghosts to be of something flesh and blood, an animal or a human, but a ghost of a Spitfire. Does anybody ever see a ghost of a
Yeah.
tree? Do you know what I'm? It's,
It's crazy, isn't it?
are we? I just
You
wonder
know,
if we're creating some of these ghosts. I don't mean they're necessarily not real, but I just don't get it at all. That we create ghosts. Oh no, that we see ghosts and they're fully clothed and they're in the attire that we would expect to have seen our granddad in or our parent or some loved one. And it's almost as though we're creating the image that we want to see. I don't know.
and it could be the area as well. You know,
Yeah.
in that area, there was all sorts of sightings and you know, in the Chiltern Hills, there's loads of legends and myths and folklore,
Really?
you know, and like random stuff as well, you know, and that roundabout where that Spitfire was, there was a house, and in the garden there was like a mosaic of a serpent, like a dragon, and right by there was the Dragon's Pond,
Right.
what they called a Dragon's Pond, and it was an old myth and legend from years ago, where the old hag used to live, the old witch, as well, and that was just in that corner. You know, you've got Four Ashes that the Green Man's seen on numerous occasions in the same area.
So how far is that from where you saw it?
Well, literally a mile,
What
if
what
not
what do you,
less than that, I think.
I don't think there's anybody who's listened to you tell the story, and we've only skimmed across it here, that doesn't think that you actually saw this. But what do you think it was? Do you think it's a nature spirit?
I do, yeah. I I got the feeling that we'd taken away its home. That's how I felt. It wasn't angry, but it was. But I just felt that we'd taken away its home
Yeah.
because of all the building work that was happening around it. Now, if those trees have been there for hundreds of years, and then like that land has been untouched for maybe 1,000 years, because they did have two Iron Age forts there, and then in Castle Hill, that was one of the forts, and then there's one down the road. So that area was just hadn't been built on
Yeah. So
in its
so
entire history. Yeah.
so jumping from that then, Mark, before we close this down, when you start the YouTube, the podcast, the YouTube channel, is it going to find you out and about in some of these areas that us in the UK, I think bulk of our listeners tonight are probably UK, are gonna? Is it going to find? Are you going to be taking us along on those journeys, or are you going to do it all from home?
Well, it's going to be a bit of both, because those black cat encounters we get here, been quite a few up in Hamner, and there's been one at Ravenswood, which is literally a kilometre away from my house.
Okay.
There was one sighted there, and that wasn't that long ago. So there's going to be feet on the ground, and
Yeah, I'm
it's
looking.
a
I'm
bit
looking
like what
forward
you
to
do,
it.
to be fair.
And I must.
And
Go on. Sorry.
sorry, and being so close to the coast, you know, with the orbs that they see, so we'll be covering a bit of that too.
Absolutely. And thank you, everybody in chat, for your support tonight, and for the donations.
Thank
It's
you.
really kind of you. Absolutely. I'm blown away, to be honest with you. I'll be able to buy a new thermal camera. Let's just have a look. No, I won't. Let's have a look here. Me, a girl, we lived on an old airfield many years ago. Yeah. And I believe that, well, you might want to tell us about it sometime, Mia girl, but you've had experiences of a ghostly kind, and I know that for sure as well. Just briefly, because we're going to close this down in a minute. Sorry, Mark, go on.
It's Hutton Cranswick. There's been reports there. Hutton Cranswick's an old airfield, RAF Driffield, around there, because they're the old where the old bombers used to go from. Strike Command, Bomber Command. Sorry, the
They're
old
supposed to be
Halifax's RAF Leconfield.
Yeah,
There's another one.
Leckenfield. You've just took that one out of
Yeah.
my mouth. I was just about to say that. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Martin Cardin wrote a book, Ghosts of the Air, Haunted Planes, Ghost Planes, Hauntings. Highly recommended. Excellent. Did you write it? I'm only joking. Yeah, thank you very much. Somebody might be interested in that. And I think we're just about there with this, Mark, and I really appreciate you giving us a couple of hours of your time today, mate. Really appreciate it.
Oh no, thank you, Paul. I really do enjoy these chats we have.
I think everybody has. I mean, we've just about held 300 people here all night, and thanks for the support, guys. Like we said before, if you've not pressed the like and subscribe, just consider doing it. It's right again, you where you sat now. And I think I'm going to say good night to everybody in chat, especially good night to Mark. Thank you, Mark, and we'll catch you very soon.
Good night.
Thanks, Paul. Good
You're
night.
welcome. Good night.
Oh, wow. Saw it twice, because I was like, oh my God.
That was just weird.
I always used to see a light coming up,
Yeah.
like a headlight, but there was nobody there.